Hi, thanks for joining me again. Today I've covered this 6" by 4" canvas board just simply with titanium white acrylic paint. It's well covered, and now I'm actually going to apply some food wrap. You can use any type of food wrap and just press it on and push it into different shapes. We want to create some texture and see what will happen just using the food wrap and the paint itself to make texture. So push it around, make sure that you get it covered on the canvas and just make some interesting shapes in the paint. And then we'll see exactly how it works. This is a good experiment. Okay, so it's now covered and I'm going to have to leave it to dry overnight. Now, I'm starting to take this off and I can already see from the first piece that it's actually worked. Peel it off really carefully. You might find a little bit of paint left on and it will come off quite easily. Just make sure that you just pull it very gently and firmly. And here we have our prepared canvas board. Really simple way to make this fabulous texture. It looks almost like frost in winter, and you can see from when I've moved it about there's little bits of valleys and little bits of ridges. Make sure it's completely dry. It seems to be absolutely dry here, so now we can start to play. So today I'm just going to use these two colours, the Liquitex acrylic inks in a yellow and a turquoise. And I'm going to try with some coarse salt. I want to see what happens when we use the salt with the acrylic inks. And this is just any brand that you can get, and it's coarse, it isn't the small grain. And this is my little pipette, and I'm just going to fill this with water. And I'm going to go straight in with the yellow ink onto this canvas, good dot in the middle, and then start to just add a few shapes with the turquoise. And obviously what's going to happen is it's going to mix and make a beautiful green. So I'm adding some water at first with a pipette. Really useful little things. You can find them in droppers, you can find them on craft stores, wherever. And just start to move that about. And what you'll notice is that the ink starts to travel in between the bits of texture that we've created with the food wrap. A little bit of a spray just to move that about. I don't want the ink to be too thick, so I want to keep it moving and keep adding moisture so that when we apply the salt, it does something interesting, I hope. I know I've done it with watercolour paint, so this will be fun to try it with the acrylic inks. And just keep applying the colour, and the wet is my faithful water spray, and just get it to move and remove it if it's getting too thick. You can take it out just as easily as you can add it in. And just play about with what you feel you would like to create. A little bit more water with the pipette, just to smoosh it around, and that is the technical term, smooshing. Okay, so now we can apply the salt. I'm just literally sprinkling it into little areas. What happens with the salt is that it actually draws the colour to it. So what we should end up with is little pockets of bright sort of pops of colour where it's fastened to the salt. So the only thing that we can do now is actually just to let this completely dry, place it in the sun or leave it overnight. So here it is now, completely dry, and it's time to remove the salt. If it's still slightly damp, then leave it a little bit longer because your ink will actually run with it. So you can scrape it off with your finger. Some of it sticks quite stubbornly, so you might need to just sort of very carefully pull it off and just move it out of the way. But it's actually worked really well. I'm very pleased, and it's going to make some interesting patterns. So what I usually do, once I've loosened it a little bit, just get an old makeup brush or a soft brush and just brush the salt away, get the crystals off there. You can actually see them. If you tip the board and you see little shiny bits, that's probably the salt, so you need to just carefully pick that off. So now all the salt has gone, and you can see now that we've got some really interesting colours and shapes. All these sort of areas where there are blobs, that's where the salt has gathered the paint, the inks together, and made some interesting frosty sort of effects. So the next question is, which way round do we actually want to work with our piece? And you have to turn it around and see which one is the best for you, really. It's a very personal choice, and it depends what you actually want to make out of it. So I've decided I like it this way up, and I'm now going to go in with some more of the turquoise ink, one of the indigo inks, and a little bit of copper, just to warm this up a little bit. And then I'm going to add in some of this lovely metallic green paint as well. So I'm using a fine liner brush to start with, because I just want to go in and just start to pick out some of these shapes. As you look at your piece, you'll find different things that you spot, whether it's a floral thing or trees or something completely random. It's very difficult to say what you might spot in yours. So with the dark indigo, I'm going to just go in and start making some marks and sort of split the painting into something more interesting. Obviously, you could actually use this as a complete background, and you could go in and paint something over the top of it in acrylics, whatever you desire. This is really just to show you the technique of how you can make these different backdrops just simply using the food wrap and the salt very effectively. So I'm going to add in a little bit more darker shades. Remember that when we add the dark colour in, it makes the lighter areas really pop. So if you've got sort of areas where you've got white, it's fabulous when you put the colour underneath those, because they will then stand out enormously. We've got some beautiful shades sort of mixed in with this. So I'm going in with the turquoise as well. The one that we use to actually make the background. So you can mix and match, do whatever. You see how adding the dark colour makes that area really pop. So I'm just going to let you watch as I sort of add a few more details, and you can have a look and see how you could add your own. So I'm using the copper metallic ink here. I'm just going to dot it into some of the areas. I don't want it to be too heavy, but I'm going to actually use some water and move that around a little bit. Just spread it around. It will sink into the cracks and the creases that we've made with the backdrop. So you can start to play about, and I'm using this lovely spatula that I've used before to pull it across the paint, to pull it into different shapes. And you can just use your finger, you could use a palette knife, you could use a credit card, but it just softens the areas and adds a little bit of warmth with the copper. If you find that the ink is stubborn, especially the metallic, then just add a watered brush to it and start to move it about. But you have to do it before it actually dries, because with being acrylics, once it's dry, you can't move it again. So I'm being a bit brutal here with my liner brush. It's not actually as bad as it looks in this film, but if you've got an old brush, that might be better than using your best liner brush. You can understand probably now why I go through so many of them. And even after you've applied the sort of copper ink, we can still go back in with the indigo or other colours and again pick out a little bit more darkness. So I'm just going to do that, drop that into some of the areas. It's creating a really interesting background, and I'm going to pick out that lovely dark area at the bottom as well. I think that where the copper is and the blue, it creates a sort of pocket of that lovely turquoise colour, which is really effective. It almost looks like a bubble or I don't know, just something interesting there. Now I'm actually going to apply some of the beautiful green gold that I've actually got. It's a company called Roberson Liquid Metal, and this is Victorian gold. It's like an olivey green, which is beautiful. And now I'm using my old store card just to scrape some metallic gold paint across the raised areas that we've got, because that again creates enormous interest. It works over the colours that we've got and adds highlights, little bits of sparkle, and just general interest to the whole design. If you haven't got an old store card, you could use a palette knife. You could even use your fingers if you wanted to wear a pair of gloves, and just apply it where you want some little bits of highlights and interest to go on. I've decided that I want this central dark indigo line to cross the canvas, almost as if it's sort of breaking it in two, but adding that interest in. So I'm just adding a little bit more depth there and pulling it right the way across. And I'm really quite pleased with how this is looking. As you can see, when I tilt it, you can see where the shimmer is. I need to just add in a little bit more, I think, just a little bit more warmth where I've actually spread it thinly. And I'm just going to add that and just spread it around with the liner brush just to get it into the areas I want a little bit more warmth. And right down at this bottom area where I've added a bit more copper, I want to go in with the indigo again. I'm still darkening some of these areas. As it dries, it does lighten a little bit, so just adding that depth in just makes a bit of a difference there. Take out that little bit. So I've decided instead of framing this piece, I'm actually going to use a poster sticker. It's just a small tab of paper with a gum on it with a little hook, and it's going to be strong enough to carry something as light as this. So really all you need to do is just wet the gummed area just with a damp tissue and just place it on the back where you roughly want it to be. Try and get it central and roughly straight, and then just hold it down for a few seconds just until it dries a little bit, and then leave it to dry completely, and you've got your own little miniature painting. And I think that works really well. If you're wondering about the salt, whether it works on a larger piece, this is one that I've done a while ago. This is a lovely favourite of mine, and you can see the areas where the salt has been, and it just adds that amazing interest and texture, and I really did enjoy working with this. So if you wanted to use it on a larger piece, you could do. I hope this will inspire you to have a go. All the ingredients that I've used, sounds like a recipe, are fairly easy available. I hope you have a go, and I look forward to seeing you for the next project. Thanks for watching. Keep painting. Bye bye.